A lot of Canadian businesses are asking the same question these days. How do we move beyond just putting out statements and actually engage in meaningful reconciliation? It's a complex topic for sure, but the path forward is becoming a lot clearer. So in this explainer, we're going to break down a practical, actionable framework for corporate Canada. Let's dive in.
This quote from Ian Shugart, it really just sets the stage, doesn't it? This isn't about good intentions. It's about a leadership imperative to take meaningful, deliberate action. It frames our entire discussion today around moving from words to real, impactful results.
And look, there's a powerful business reality that's really pushing this change forward. Statistics Canada projects that by 2041, 2 in every 5 Canadians will be part of a racialized group. That demographic shift makes inclusion way more than just a moral goal. It's become a fundamental business necessity.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll start with why this change is so critical right now. Then, we'll build a common vocabulary so we're all on the same page. After that, we'll explore a real framework for action. And finally, we'll look at what reconciliation looks like in practice with some great real-world examples.
All right, so first up, let's really dig into the why. Because beyond all the moral and demographic reasons, there is a seriously compelling business case for making diversity, equity, and inclusion a core part of your strategy. And when you look at the hard data, it tells a pretty compelling story. Research shows that companies with above-average diversity, they generate 19% more revenue from innovation, and their profitability is higher too. They're 36% more likely to outperform their peers on ethnic diversity and 25% more likely on gender diversity. The numbers are just crystal clear. Diverse teams drive better business outcomes.
Okay, so before we can take any kind of effective action, we've all got to be on the same page, right? We need to be speaking the same language. So this next section is all about building a shared vocabulary around some really essential concepts.
So the journey usually kicks off right here, with cultural awareness. This is step one. It's simply recognizing and acknowledging that differences in culture, in values, and in experiences exist. It's the foundation that everything else is built on.
From there, we move on to the next step, cultural competency. And this goes way deeper than just awareness. It actually requires us to look inward, to self-reflect on our own values and biases, and understand how they shape our interactions. It's about moving from just observing a difference to understanding our own role in it.
And really, the ultimate goal here is what's called cultural safety. Now, this is crucial. It's not something we get to define for ourselves. It's an outcome that is felt and experienced by the other person. It's about creating an environment that's free from discrimination, where they feel genuinely safe and respected.
All right, let's tackle a more complex but absolutely critical term, systemic racism. It is so important to understand that this isn't about individual prejudice. It's about how power imbalances are literally built into our systems, our institutions, through policies, rules, and regulations that, whether they were intended to or not, end up reinforcing inequity.
And this is where you can see how those bigger systemic issues show up in just day-to-day interactions. Microaggressions are these seemingly small comments that carry hostile or negative messages. Phrases like the ones you see here, they create a really harmful environment, especially when they just keep piling up over time.
So, with that foundation laid, we can finally turn to the big question. How do we do this? Well, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission gave us a specific roadmap for the corporate sector in its Call to Action 92.
So what's at the heart of Call to Action 92? Well, it's asking businesses to take the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, you'll hear it called UNDREP, and use that as their main framework. This means applying its principles of respect, partnership, and self-determination to all of their corporate policies and operations that involve Indigenous peoples.
When you break it down, Call to Action 92 really has 3 main pillars, 3 core commitments. First, commit to meaningful consultation and building respectful relationships. Second, ensure equitable access to jobs, training, and economic benefits. And third, provide education for all management and staff on Indigenous history, rights, and anti-racism. Those are the 3 big ones.
But, how do you actually put those pillars into practice? Well, Indigenous consultants like Bob Glaze have laid out what they call wise practices. This means going beyond the bare legal minimum of duty to consult to achieve real, meaningful engagement. It means establishing formal partnerships, things like memorandums of understanding, and investing in the capacity of communities so they can engage as truly equal partners.
Okay, so what does all this actually look like on the ground? Let's move away from the theory for a minute and look at how this work is already being done and done successfully right here in Canada.
And honestly, there is just an incredible ecosystem of Indigenous-owned businesses that are absolutely leading the way here. You've got Smoke Architecture, a firm focused on Indigenous projects, Kehoe Fabco, which is using high-tech robotics, and companies like Mahas that are forming major joint ventures. These examples just highlight the immense expertise and opportunity that's out there for powerful partnerships.
And if you're looking for a really powerful case study, a kind of gold standard for partnership, you've got to look at the relationship between Northcrest Developments and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Their work on the Downsview Airport lands in Toronto gives us a tangible roadmap for how to build a deep, respectful partnership.
One of the biggest lessons to come out of this case study is this huge shift from a transactional approach to a relational one. You see, a transactional mindset is all about checking a box, meeting that bare legal minimum. But the relational approach, which is what Northcrest and MCFN embraced, is about taking a long-term view, engaging early and often, and seeking genuine mutual benefit. It's about restoring friendly relations. And I gotta stress, this was not some overnight success story. Their journey took years of really dedicated work. It started with early engagement guided by Indigenous consultants right from the get-go. It included mandatory cultural competency training for all of their staff. They had over 150 different touchpoints just to build the relationship, and only then did they formalize it with a co-developed MOU. It just goes to show, real partnership takes time and commitment.
So, if there's one crucial takeaway from all of this, is this. Reconciliation isn't a project with an end date. It's not a box you check. It's a journey. And it requires sustained commitment, a clear framework like Call to Action 92, and maybe most importantly, a fundamental shift away from those transactional interactions to truly relational partnerships.
And this final quote, it's a powerful reminder that this work is also deeply personal. Anti-racism means committing to fight racism everywhere you find it, and that includes within ourselves. It's a continuous process of learning and then acting. So as we close, the question isn't really whether to act, but where to begin. Where will you start?